Hi, I'm Rufus, and today we are doing the Infinity Conquest VOD review that I do once a season, where I play a few Infinity Conquest off stream, and I pick one out, ideally a successful one, to go over after playing it, and just talk through my experience with Conquest as a whole, throughout the season, what my strategies were to get the avatars, why I chose the decks I did, and whatever other topics I can come up with. Today we'll talk about one, how I got so many avatars. So to give a quick recap of my season, as far as Conquest goes, this season actually started out with a lot of gold tickets because I opened a bunch of caches that I was saving up just because I didn't feel like opening them, honestly. And I started the season with like over 30 gold tickets and pretty much just did golds. I did some silvers and proving grounds here and there, and ended up with 27 infinity tickets going into the Infinity Conquest week. And out of those 27, I got 12 borders, which is by far the most I've ever gotten. I think the next closest I ever got was I want to say 6, or not even 6, probably under 5, like 4 to 5. I think 4. Yeah, 4. 4 would be the most I think I had. And yeah, part of that is because I had so many infinity tickets. And part of that is that I felt like I was winning a high percentage of my matches. Actually, for my first 20 tickets, I had, I think for my first 18, I got to 10 borders before I got to 20 runs, basically. And after I did 10, I was just going for double digits. After I did 10, I kind of took it a little bit easier. So my win rate went down a little bit. But I still think, honestly, if you can get 2 out of 7, that's very good, right? If you have a 80% win rate, I'm pretty sure you're only expected to win 1 out of every 6 or 8. So, but yeah, I will go into the individual games. This game, we're double Lokiing, but I didn't have a good setup to Loki because of Mindscape, right? I didn't want to give my opponent a bunch of move cards so they could use better than me. They're pretty far ahead on board, so I believe I just leave here. That being said, I did get Shadow King back from them. But yeah, so yeah, once I realized I was getting close to double digits, I did try hard Loki. I'll include a tweet below with all the exact deck lists that I used. I used a total of 11 decks, 6 of which I got borders with. Loki was my most played with 28 games. Out of the 28, I won 26 of them. I think 5 borders was the total amount for this deck that we're using right now. It's pretty much your standard Loki list. The specific Asian 13 plus armor variation I got from a tweet from Safety Blade, mainly because of the prevalence of destroy, and armor helps a lot with that. Yeah, I was originally thinking about doing a video on a deck different than Loki, but then, right, like I said, I was looking at my stats. Loki was my most played and highest win rate, right, 92% win rate. And honestly, I think Loki is the deck where you most change your gameplay style, or you can more easily change your gameplay style. And that's something that I think is really important when you're doing these long 5-game series, even 3-game series, where if your deck is very straightforward and plays the same way, that's good. You'll do well because of that, but you'll also lack that flexibility to adapt to your opponent playing better, right? So one thing with Infinity Conquest in particular is that your opponents can vary from being good to bad, basically. I won't mince words. You can get some pretty bad opponents in Infinity Conquest, but you can also get the best players in the world in Infinity Conquest, right? There's no matching other than the amount of wins, right? So the difficulty will go up, assuming that good players win, bad players lose, right? As you go up each tier. Right, so for example, this opponent, they do know like the basics of their deck of like doing the multiple man Iron Fist stuff, but they're also lacking the ability to not fill lanes, right? They're filling their left lane here, which makes it a lot easier for me to counter. I think one thing I did find out later is that they're running a Falcon, so that might explain why they were doing that. But yeah, so those are just some topics that I'll touch up. But yeah, I'll link a tweet below so you can see the exact deck list and win rates. My next most popular deck was a Miss Marvel, like Eliath and Annihilus control list, which I think is pretty strong. And that offers something similarly, like as opposed to some Annihilus decks, where you have Valkyrie, Profix, and Annihilus for turn 5, so you can change your play based off of that. But yeah, so the reason that I like this Loki list, right? I'll touch on directly like why Loki is so adaptable, right? Obviously, stealing your opponent's deck super strong, doing the collector stuff super strong. Even when you're not doing that, you have several other outs here, right? We have this Shang-Chi, this armor to counter specific decks, right? Shuri, we want to hold our Shang-Chis. If there's like a Black Knight deck or anything that puts a lot of power on board, we can use Shang-Chi for that. Destroy, we have armor, and then we have this Werewolf with a bunch of small stuff and Falcon, and that can be our other winning line. Okay, I will note something about this game, so I'm doing all this math here to figure out how I can win right, left, and right, because they can't add power there. And then I believe I make a mistake, and I forget that the Werewolf is going to trigger their Craven, so I do believe I lose this. So I boomer snap here because I'm like, okay, I beat them by exactly like 1 point or whatever, or 2 points. But I could have done this correctly by playing the Forge on the Hulkbuster instead. And I don't think I needed the power on the right. So yeah, I should have forged the Hulkbuster instead for sure. And that would have allowed me to win this game. So yeah, small mistakes puts me behind. I will talk about mistakes and mentality and why you shouldn't let that bother you too much. Or why you should. Yeah, it depends. Yeah, you see here I put exactly 11 because I forgot that the Werewolf is going to trigger the cloak. And look, I'm over 6 power on Daily Bugle. I did not need the Forge on the cloak. I could have forged the Hulkbuster instead and done basically the same play, except I have the Werewolf bounce mid first, right? But yeah, so that is something, that is one reason why Werewolf is so good. I do think that it could use like 1 or 2 power bump down, but honestly I think the main reason is that Loki stuff is really strong. But the big thing with Werewolf is you can put it in any lane by the end of the game, right? And that's a flexibility that some decks don't have, right? So that's something I noticed that I did struggle with, even though I did like the options of the Profix Annihilus deck. One thing I noticed is that that deck was a lot better towards the beginning of Infinity Conquest than towards the end, because more people started playing around the Sentry, right? And they started feeling right. And because you don't have that flexibility to play Sentry wherever you want, it is a big boon to that deck. And people started like realizing that yes, Annihilus is good when it destroys the Sentry, but it's like game winning when it sends it across the board, right? Here, pretty easy snap Subterranea. I have Falcon, Loki, Collector. Very, very good stuff. Double Vaults is a little bit scary, but I can open them with the Hawk if needed. Yeah, for these first few games and throughout, I might breeze over the games a little bit. I'll try and focus on when we get to very important moments in the game. Since I'm still kind of giving an intro here, I don't know. I try and take this a little bit more lax, a little bit more talking about the topics I want to touch up, at least for the beginning. And then we'll get into the nitty gritty once it gets to the more difficult matchups. So yeah, okay. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So the next thing I want to talk about, right? So I did say my most popular deck was Loki, followed by the Annihilus Lockdown with a little bit of like my twist, which was just like Daredevil Valkyrie. Um, my next most popular deck is a complete homebrew, right? Actually, my next two most popular. One was a homebrew I did. Other is a homebrew done by Jeff Hooglin. Mine, if you see a feature on my channel, I think twice already, I featured a Movement Sentry Annihilus deck. This is a deck that has the like Werewolf, Craven, Silk, Juggernaut package alongside the Sentry Hood Annihilus stuff. And then Jeff's list was that I used was the Black Bolt Stature list with Werewolf and Goose and some like tech cards that like aim to empty our opponent's hand, right? So Black Widow, Spider-Ham, that kind of thing. Okay. Sorry, I'm losing my voice a bit now. So, okay, yeah. So what I want to talk about here is, so between all those lists, right? So the Loki list, I had a 92% win rate. Obviously, bigger sample size, almost 30 games. Similarly, I had a 90% win rate with the Eliath deck. But with my homebrew, I had 100% win rate. 10-0, I won both Infinity Conquests for that. And then with Jeff's list, I was 8-2. I won Infinity Conquest and then I made it pretty deep on another one. I think I lost one in the first round. I remember that one. It was a really dumb mistake. And I will talk about dumb mistakes as well, like I said, when I talk about tilt. But yeah, so one thing I noticed, and one thing you should think about when choosing decks, so I think I've talked about choosing decks in the past, so I won't get too deep into it. But when you're deciding between picking the strongest decks versus the more homebrew style, right, the stuff that you don't see a lot, right? This Loki deck, everyone sees. I've played one or two mirrors of this Infinity Conquest myself. It's one of the more popular variations of the list. I don't think it's the most popular, but it's like it's not popular as Cam or Lambie's lists, but it's pretty close. This is right, Safety's list, another popular creator. And so the advantage, right, you have strongest decks is that there's a reason they're strong, right? They're not strong for no reason. There's just a lot of winning lines, and Loki in particular, you have all this flexibility, right? But your opponents will more or less know all the cards in your deck, right? So when you're taking this into Conquest in particular, you lack the surprise factor, and it's important to realize that you lack the surprise factor. Quick note on this game that's going on right now, I realized that my opponent could Doctor Strange the Vulture and the Multiple Man, so I definitely did not want to put my Werewolf middle, which was definitely a good choice here. As you could tell, they put 20 power right there. Definitely would have been bigger than the 7. But also, I didn't want my Werewolf to get shrunk like Lotar, right? So I pretty much had one play with a Werewolf. I don't really like filling the lane, but didn't really have a choice. Here I just go for the Loki. I have Quinjet on the board already. I need just power to put out. I don't think Collector will be enough. Gamora was an option as well, honestly. Going Snowguard, Gamora, right. But I think in general, when you have Quinjet down and you can get a full hand of Loki, especially versus my opponent who has like Vision and Chavez to give me, that's just big things I can plop down. There's no downside. And then before I go back to deck things, I will quickly talk about move. And this is important if you play versus a pure move deck, right? Like Infinity Conquest. When your opponent plays Heimdall, or similarly the Bifrost effect, the cards will move from bottom right to top left, right? So if my opponent Heimdall's here, like let's say they Heimdall on the right, their Craven and their Doctor Strange will move over to the left. So that's what I'm trying to consider here is if they Heimdall, can I beat it? And how much do I need to put mid, right? To also beat any kind of shifts mid. Another small thing to note specifically for Loki Werewolf interactions, Hulkbuster will move Werewolf, but only if Hulkbuster merges onto an on reveal card. So I was able to get it to move here because I merged the Hulkbuster onto Snowguard. But if I merged it, like let's say I played the Vision first and then I tried to merge it onto the Vision, it would not move. Important interaction to know. Similarly, Tarmax, if you play an on reveal and it transforms, your werewolf will only move if it transformed into another on reveal. Okay, so I talked about the strengths of the strong decks. Let's talk about the strength of running homebrews, right? So I'll call my Annihilus move deck homebrew because I made it. It's kind of two packages mixed together. And advantage to that is your average player, even your above average player, unless they're like specifically in the same circles as you share the list. So honestly, like your homebrews at home will probably be even more effective than my homebrews. The advantage that you have is that your opponent is going in completely blind, right? So you can take a lot of cubes off them early before they really know what hits them. And that's something that, I realized with the Move Annihilus deck and even with Jeff's deck, where if you're not running a meta deck, I feel like they don't expect you to have tech cards, which is really funny. Like, no one was playing around my Shadow King or Juggernaut, I felt like, in my Annihilus deck. And honestly, probably because they're trying to figure out what the heck like Craven and Sentry are doing in the same deck. Let's see, let me just skip ahead here. I split Murray Hill, I get nothing. Okay. Yeah, let's go into the second game. Similarly, Jeff's deck, people didn't really expect Enchantress. I could get them with some hams and stuff. Yeah, so we got through the first match fairly easily here. I did make one mistake. I did get a little bit tilted by it, but I managed to make up for it. Yeah, so the advantage of homebrews is your opponent doesn't know what's going on. And that's something, so I'll elaborate a bit more on that here. When your opponent, first thing you should do at the beginning of each conquest, what I do, is try and figure out what deck my opponent's playing. And if I can figure out what other cards they have in it, right? And if you're running meta deck, that's a lot easier than if you're not, right? So in the case of this opponent, I see Sunspot and I immediately think it's probably a high Evo deck. The only decks that really run Sunspot in this current meta game are high Evo and like a Ramp Galactus list. Occasionally you'll see it in like certain Kazoo decks, but first thing, the most popular deck is high Evo Shenaut. Sometimes it's in the other versions of high Evo, so don't like narrow in on the Shenaut stuff until you see like a Magic. But do realize that that is very much a thing. Here this matchup starts horribly for us. They get a Sunspot and Altar of Death. They get another one at Tarnax. I can only play middle basically. I do have a Werewolf, but like it's just like on turn 4 already. They're snapping me. I'll leave. I'm assuming it's high Evo Shenaut, especially with the Shocker now. Usually use that to discount the Shulker and Infinite. And yeah, as soon as you can pick out what deck they are, try to figure out what strategy to use, right? Obviously, if you don't know what they are or you're unsure what strategy kind of to do, go just like play as optimally as you can, but try to think about how you can adapt. Like, could you have played this turn better? Should you be fighting for priority? Should you not be? Which tech cards do you have? Are going to be useful or not useful? You want to think about that from the get-go, like right away. It's super important. I really can't stress this enough, especially if they're on an off brew. If they're not an off brew, you can kind of get away with like what I'm going to say here, which is my strategy going into Loki, into Shenaut style deck, is to Snowguard Hawk them on turns 5 or 6, depending on if they have Leech or not. That is pretty much what you'll see me try to do all the time. Like, you'll see me go Collector Loki and Hawk after the Loki, which loses you 2 points on the collector, but it leaves you a Hawk, so you can play out their cards and then you can Hawk them. Hayuba Shenaut can go taller than you on 7 turns, pretty much always. Like, you have to have some pretty nutty hands and steals to make it so that they don't beat you, basically. So that was already what I'm thinking about going to this, is like, I want to use my snow guards here. My opponent snaps me here. I have Collector, Loki, and Werewolf, and I think I can get a lot of points into Sanctum here. Right, so not really sure why they snapped, so that's why I stayed. They played a bunch of Djinns, which I guess helps their Sunspot, but their Sunspot is contesting the Collector, and then them playing the Djinns makes it harder for them to like put power right on the left, on the right, which is eventually going to become the mid. But yeah, here I played out the Djinn so that I could get out an early Loki. I even got the Nico to copy the Loki, which just means I'm going to get tons of points. I'm still not quite sure if I'll be able to outpower, say, like, Djinn into pass Hulk. So that's kind of why I don't snap back here. I'm just trying to figure out what's exactly going on. Like, why are they so confident, right? Yeah, they're playing on early Hulk here. They might pass into Infinite, right? That is what I think they're trying to do here. Or Infinite She-Hulk with this extra mana, right? I do get their Leech, so I know they have that, but with the Djinn, I'm pretty sure they're going She-Hulk, Infinite, or She-Hulk plus some smaller cards, which means that they'll only have Djinns mid, so I'm going to try and go for Leech and see if I can outpower them in Strange Academy. I kind of changed my strategy here a little bit. Wait, I actually had the Nico thing wrong. Nico did not copy Loki, yes. So I'm giving up left here, pretty much. And I'm just going to go for a Leech, and since I have Hulk and a bunch of other cheap stuff, I'm trying to figure out, can I win right here? I decided to play the armor, because by playing the armor, it means that I should always win the Sanctum. I wasn't sure if they're going to play like another card. Yeah, if you notice, I was looking at my hand because I was trying to figure out how to move the Werewolf over, because I was pretty sure I need to move the Werewolf over. Eventually, I realized that by playing Leech on Nor Dimension, it would give me a Djinn, and the Djinn is going to move the Werewolf over. Right, so now I Leech them. The most they can do is play out a Infinite. I'm going to end up moving the Werewolf over the Djinn and playing out 16 power. So I'll have a total of 26, which should always win here. I don't snap back because I do think it would be pretty obvious what I'm doing if I snapped. But you could argue that I should snap here. And actually, I would have snapped before the Leech if I realized the Djinn soon enough, but I think I realized too late, and by then I was just wanted to get my turn down. Yeah. Those types of things where you're running out of time and you don't snap, but you make the right play, I think that's always much better than getting upset over yourself for, like, don't get upset about yourself for not snapping. Try and make sure you always get the right play in, at least. And yeah, and that will kind of teeter into the next thing I want to talk about, which is tilt. One thing I noticed this season, I mean, kind of every season, I'm the type of person that always gets upset if I make a misplay, especially one that I think is like an obvious misplay. And I think it's important. So one thing I tried to do, and obviously I'm still working on it, is try not to let it affect me while I'm playing the game, right? Conquest is a game of stamina where you're playing a lot of these over and over. And it's important to maintain calm, I guess is the way to put it. where if you get tilted, you're gonna end up making more mistakes. So that's kind of like how I convinced myself to it. I was like, if I get tilted, I'm gonna make more mistakes. Let's not get tilted. Since I hate let's not get tilted by making the mistakes. I'll get tilted after games, but not during. Here I go for the Loki copy. Obviously, if we get leech, it could be an issue, but if they do leech, we should be far enough ahead from the fact that they didn't play magic. So I do believe I go for a snap here. There is one way I can see them beating this, and that's with a perfect shocker hit on either She-Hulk or one of the big guys, Infinite or Hulk, right? Because then they could pass here and play the two big guys, and then it becomes more of a 50-50. And by the fact, yeah, so they don't. I decide not to snap for that reason, actually. And by the fact that they pass here, it made it pretty obvious to me that that's what they're going for. And here I'm trying to figure out if I can beat their She-Hulk lane. And in order to do that, I would have to guess where they're She-Hulking, which is a little bit tough because I do also need to put some points in the Cyclops lane, right? So I'm trying to see if I do with Loki, can I beat the She-Hulk on the left? And the answer is yes, I can beat it left and mid. But not right. Fortunately, they do put it on the right. And I do believe I lose this. But it was only for 1 cube, so I was like, and I didn't know what it hit, so. Right, it's very possible they couldn't do both. And this was a situation where I always beat one of them. So I was willing to risk 1 cube. Sometimes I'm willing to risk 1 cube early just to see my opponent's playstyle. That's something I don't know if it's necessarily right. It really depends on if you think your deck can afford it. I feel like a lot of the time. And Loki is definitely a deck that you can afford to spend a cube or 2 for info, right? So especially because your info can be learning their entire deck with Loki. That's something I always try and keep track of, is when I Loki like on round 1 or 2, I try and keep track of as many cards as possible. And I think that's pretty important with this deck, right? That's a huge advantage that Loki has, is that they can figure out your opponent's deck like right away. Here I snap on getting the extra energy, and the fact that I pick all my cards up right as well. Werewolf is a nice bonus on top. Yes, now we're going to high stakes. I have a small lead, 7-5, so basically a 1 game lead, or 1 retreat lead, which is pretty nice since I feel like I haven't really popped off too much outside of the 1 game that I put out like a bajillion stats. The Strange Academy Sanctum game. But yeah, so that's kind of one thing I've been doing for my mental. Obviously, feel free to talk about what helps you below. I'd love to know. I frequently, when I'm off stream, take breaks in between games, especially if there's a stressful one. I'll just like walk around for 5 minutes. I think that's really helpful. When I stream, I don't do that, which does affect my play a little bit, but obviously you can't really do that while you stream. Yeah, definitely. Oh, I should remind, I know obviously it's pretty late already, like it's like half an hour into the video, but you definitely should like and subscribe if you made it this far, because I might just start to ramble. I'm probably going to delve into the games a little bit more now. I think I went through the main things I wanted to talk about. Obviously, if you take a really good list and you swap out some key cards, right? Let's say you don't want to run Shang-Chi, your opponents are all are all other Loki players, and they're just Shang-Chiing you all the time, and you hate it. And you're seeing a ton of Miss Marvel. You could swap in a rogue instead, and that's also just as good, honestly. Here you see I Snowguard Hawk on 5. This is because my opponent has Leech, and I want to beat the Leech. Yeah, and so they go for Cyclops. So now I'm like, okay, they can play a 4-power She-Hulk, or they can just play a Big Hulk. Those are kind of the two things I need to beat. I do have Loki and a bunch of small stuff, so I can add power to the right while also adding cards middle and left, which I believe should beat pretty much anything. Right, so as long as I make sure that I'm winning left and middle by more than the Baxter buff, right? So right now the Baxter buff is not active. So as long as I'm more than 4 middle and more than 5, 5 on the right, I'll win versus like a Big Hulk on the right. And they snap here. It's just 1 extra cube. I think it is generally correct to do that in this situation because if they're going to stay for 4, you might as well stay for 5. And honestly, so I was like, oh yeah, pretty much same thing. Now they're pretty confident. I'm thinking they're probably just going to play something big on Baxter. Yeah, it's pretty tough to beat this because if they don't fight for Baxter, I get the +3 everywhere, and then that would more likely than not beat the She-Hulk stuff if they like didn't fight for Baxter instead. But yeah, they stopped 24 power Hulk, obviously very strong, but does not win more than 1 lane. And I'll be able to clutch that out. But yeah, honestly, you didn't see me use the Hawk too much this matchup, but I do think if you utilize it, like it's really tough for them to win without like a perfect shocker hit because they can generally only fight for 1 lane. That's why I generally think the Moon Girl list is better. The Moon Girl list is actually better into Loki as well. For that reason, where they can Moon Girl and then they have a second win condition of dropping multiple She-Hulks on turn 6 instead. The Leech list I don't think are good. Honestly, I think it's super overrated considering the popularity of the list in Infinity Conquest, especially. Alright, here we're going to the 3rd matchup. And yeah, I'm just gonna start focusing now we're in 3. Honestly, 3, 4, 5, the matches generally start to get harder, so I'm just gonna focus on why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. One thing you'll always notice I do with Loki, or maybe you don't notice, so I should touch on it. I always put small cards in the collector lane. So Mirror Hill, Quinjet, that sort of thing goes in the collector lane. You pretty much never want a Loki in your collector lane. Very, very important, honestly. Yeah, so here I'm snapping Loki. It's a Zabu Darkhawk deck. We saw Zabu, we saw Zabu, we saw Black Widow. There's a small possibility that it's a Century Nihilist deck. Either way, I'm pretty happy with Loki here. Obviously, it's going to be pretty small Loki, but it's fine. Yeah, here I put Falcon. It could be wrong. I put Falcon in Baxter building mainly because I want to make sure I win Baxter. I should get Shadow King by the Iron Lad here, which is pretty annoying. But it is what it is. I know they have a Shadow King in hand now, so I just have to worry about it on the last turn, or so I thought. But yeah, you'll see here they actually decide to proactively Shadow King me, which makes my Werewolf by Night pretty sad. And honestly, I probably should have left here. You'll notice I stayed. If this happens to you, don't stay. But also I did some math wrong. I thought I could beat their Doctor Doom here. For some reason, I thought Doctor Doom would add 5 left, but it only adds 2. So yeah, don't make that mistake. Obviously, I can't get a full value Doom here, which is definitely a downside. But yeah, I'm just thinking they play Doom. And they're not snapping, so I get a little bit cocky here. It's definitely something that can happen when you're playing one of the strongest decks in the format. You can fall into these traps of thinking like, oh, this never loses. Yeah, here their Doom actually wins by 1 point, which is not good. Like I knew the Miss Marvel would not buff Baxter. Actually, fantastic I did not expect, so I would have lost anyways. But I knew since I played Shadow King Zabu there, Miss Marvel would not affect it there. So I'll lose 4 cubes early. I do think this was a bad stay for sure. I should have just left, taken my info, said like, oh, Shadow King, something to play around in the future, right? I noticed I dig myself a lot of holes. That's something I'll work on next season, where I had a lot of games where I lose 4 to 8 cubes early, and that shouldn't happen, in my opinion. I'll have to look back and see if all of them were avoidable things to do, but yeah, ideally you don't want to lose too many early on. Like early on, before high stakes, right, are the games that are worth half, right? They're worth 1 or 2 cubes. Like you want to try and stay healthy going to high stakes, because then you just have less games to play with, right? If something goes horribly wrong, you get the worst ego imaginable. You don't have as many games as you do in those stakes, right? So but Zabu Hawk pretty decent into our deck. The Miss Marvel stuff was new this season, right? So even though I have experience playing the Darkhawk matchup honestly before, the Miss Marvel is a new thing where they can usually get it off and you can't, right? So my strategy for this actually was to always play for the Miss Marvel and not stack 1s or 2s on the left and right if I could avoid it. And so yeah, you notice me doing this game. I think if you honestly just go through and you look through any of my stream VODs, or we'll see how often it happens, but I was trying to keep cognizant. I think there's a few times where like I don't get Loki right here, I'm gonna put another 2 on the left because I'm not getting Loki ever. Or like I have a werewolf, sometimes you have to sacrifice it, but if possible I always try it. I realize that in this matchup, if I try to play for the Miss Marvel, getting it off of the Loki is like huge, right? You're gonna get a 3 or 2 mana Miss Marvel, and that's just 15 split stats. So like really try and keep cognizant, see if you can. Obviously there's locations and stuff that can mess you up, but if you can, try to play for that high roll. And a lot of times you'll get paid off for it, and it will make a huge difference, right? You'll if you have Quinja out, you can go Miss Marvel, Doctor Doom. I've done that a few times. I don't know if we'll see that here, but I've definitely done that more than once in this matchup this season alone. So yeah, little things like that is where it's like, I think that makes a big difference, right? It adds up as the Loki player. It gives you like extra wins that you wouldn't get otherwise. Here I'm just gonna kill the Widow's Bite. Alright, play Collector, play Widows. They have an Oslo Citadel. I have Shang-Chi and Armor, so obviously I'm not gonna armor Onslaughts in case of Darkhawk there. I'm actually pretty surprised they played Fantastic left here, but I guess they just value the sewer system a lot. But here's the situation, right, where I don't have Loki. I'm just going for the Werewolf bouncing, but I did get Nico's card draw here, so I do snap. I generally snap that versus Darkhawk. You do have to watch out for it. If you're trying to do it on turn 2 and they have priority, they can Black Widow you, so I won't always snap it on turn 2. But in this situation, they already use Black Widow. I get to get the draw 2. We did get a unlucky, and the Iron Lad gave us rocks, but Then I get lucky and I get Quinjet Loki anyways, which obviously is just insane. Issue here is if I play Loki into Warrior Falls, the Werewolf will kill the Loki, and if I play it in Oslo Citadel, I can't play in their next turn, so I just play them both mid. I forfeit some Werewolf value for flexibility of moving the Werewolf wherever I want on the last turn, which I think is super important. Yeah, here I get some valuable info. I get to see their Goliath. I actually get their Absorbing Man too, so I can either go Doom Absorbing Man, or in this case, I'm trying to figure out if I can go Goliath Absorbing Man, because the issue is Doctor Doom kills the Goliath or the Absorbing Man and Warrior Falls, and it's also they're not big enough in certain locations, right? And they're also moving the Werewolf. I was trying to get the Werewolf to end up in Warrior Falls, but the issue with that, right, is then the Goliath is not big enough to win Oslo Citadel. My opponent retreats before I can figure it out. Likely the correct move was to go just Doctor Doom Absorbing Man. This way the Absorbing Man dies in Warrior Falls. But yeah, hindsight 2020. I think I might have found that play eventually. Yeah, you can just do some disgusting stuff, right? Double Doctor Doom or double Goliath are both just crazy. Obviously, if I also guessed the Doctor Doom position correctly, which was a 66% chance, I would have won as well, right? It's only if they dodge the Goliath with the Doctor Doom that they had a chance. Double Goliath. So that's something funny I realized about this specific matchup, is that I can use the Absorbing Man pretty effectively here. But yeah, so you'll see here I drop the Widow's Bite into the Collector lane. You'll notice me always drop low power stuff in the Collector lane, because with Loki, you really, really value your board space. Like, it is, it is so important to have high value spaces. Like, since I have Falcon, I'm able to play this Agent 13 and Snow Guard. Obviously, you'll be in situations where you have to play them out. But if you have Loki, like, you want every board slot, because especially with Quinjet, you want to be able to fill them and have flexibility to do what you need to do. Like, to do all this insane stuff that Loki can do when you high roll. Like, if you limit your board space, that's how I'm able to beat Loki so frequently. Honestly, like, I've noticed is that a lot of them will flood the board, and then by looking at my deck, I can be like, oh, if they have 3 slots full, they can only put exactly this much there, like from my deck, right? So something small that I do think is super important for Loki in particular. Here I get card draw again. I have Loki in hand, Quinjet in hand. I believe I do snap this. I should snap this. I don't snap this. Well, what am I doing? I might be waiting to see more locations here. I have Collector. I should be snapping this. I am snapping this. Yes, there we go. Okay, maybe I'm just afraid of a turn 1 snap since it's like high stakes immediately. I am behind, so if a poor location pops up, that could be an issue, right? Like, I really want the right lane to be a safe lane to Collector in, because of the fact that I don't want to throw in Danger Room, and throwing it into Shuri's Lab is kind of whatever. Look, we get Bar here, so unfortunately I don't have a safe place to put this Collector, so I'm just thinking about, like, maybe I'm just gonna go Armor Collector, and then I'm really hoping I can get to this Falcon. I do get 2 more draws on it. I get a draw on it next turn, and turn 5. So, and I have 3 options, or I can get Agent 13 and Shang-Chi or Falcon. The Darkhawk does get zapped here, which helps me a lot. But yeah, I'm just like, I need this Falcon. I get Shang-Chi, so 50-50 I get Falcon next turn. And I'm just trying to figure out if it's worth it to Collector here. And honestly, I think I conclude it's not, because if I get Falcon next turn, I want to play it anyways, right? So I don't auto lose bar of no name. And if I don't, well, then I'm kind of screwed now. Like I can never Loki and Falcon, so I'm just decide to Loki now. Get the Werewolf proc. I get their Shadow King, which is kind of nice for Shurious Lab. Right, Loki does get zapped, which is unfortunate. But double Korg is not super scary. But I do have a ton of cheap stuff in hand, which is pretty nice. I do unfortunately end up getting a rock since we get double rocked, which is very unfortunate. But now I'm just trying to figure out if I can set up. I did get a ton of good stuff here where I think I might just be able to set up like a Chavez win, right? Like I have a ton of power here. If I can win middle by enough, they would have to run like the odds on playing to Danger Room, and honestly they can only add, right, safely the Doctor Doom. Like they can't play Doctor Doom, so they have to play like Miss Marvel and something over there. Okay, so if this, I'm thinking like, oh, so they're probably trying to play Miss Marvel there. Just bouncing my Werewolf. They just Shadow King it, but I'm still getting the bounce value. Get the Sabu down. And now I'm looking, right, and now the best I could do is play Iron Lad on the left, right, or going Miss Marvel, Black Widow, which adds 6, right, so they can only ever add 6 to Danger Room, and they could also, right, ally at the mid, right. Basically nothing they can do can win here versus my Travis is my determination. But they already burned their Shadow King, so they can't play that mid. I'm winning left and right, even though I auto lose bar of no name. There is literally no card in their deck that saves them here. We know their last card is alive because we saw it on Loki. Yeah, they end up retreating here, and super big win, right? Going to high stakes. I was behind, and now we got 4 cubes, and now I'm ahead. And I can't die if they go all in, which is super awesome. Get Lechigia here, a little bit unfortunate, because I cannot play into there if I don't want to die to Darkhawk. I do have Misty Knight for DC if I do want to do it, but Nico draw you pretty much always want to take, especially into Darkhawk deck. It's kind of reducing their Darkhawk by 4 is nutty, and whenever you don't draw rocks, you're super happy. Kill on the other hand, not too happy about. That's actually why I decided to go Snowguard instead of Werewolf, because I'm pretty much never keeping Werewolf inside Kiln. I don't know why I didn't consider Miss Marvel here. I probably should have played Snowguard middle. I might just be too board constrained. Alright, the Lechigia, yeah. I assume that's why. And I'm just assuming that this collector should be big enough. As long as I make sure not to play into DC. Or into Lechigia. Right, assuming they Hawk Kiln here. They could also Shadow King it, is a little bit scary. But if they Shadow King it, I get a bunch more power, so it's not super worrying. Yeah, they do end up going for Shadow King, smart play. But like I said, it only ties there. I did get their Doctor Doom and their Goliath. So yeah, I decided to do that here in DC. The Doombot's worth 8. But they decide to play a large Dark Hawk. And now it's time for me to make the biggest misplay ever. And I get Goliath Brain, and I'm like, okay. if they play... I don't even know what I'm doing here, because I lose to Miss Marvel mid as well, right? Miss Marvel is 25, 7, 8. Wait, I actually beat Miss Marvel by 1 point here. But I lose to Doom if they play it mid. And I never lost if I play Fantastic here and stuff on the Lechigia, right? Because their Darkhawk is already mid. They can never add more than 5 power to Kiln. And they can't Eliath left, and they can't add any more than 6, 7 power to Lechigia, right? So like if I'm always winning Lechigia with literally Fantastic mid, and Fantastic mid always wins, right? I should do that. That's something I noticed when looking back at this game. But yeah, so now I put myself in a must-win 2 in a row, which obviously you don't want to do this. Don't want to put yourself in this situation. I think this is the tightest match in this set. Yeah, here I get the Nico draw, which is a little bit unfortunate because I don't have anything to kill right now. Obviously armor does not trigger because armor protects itself. Luckily I do get this Agent 13, super awesome. Decide not to play it in for a Sentinel, just to keep my hand space a little bit empty. Miles is honestly a really good hit here, because if I move as Werewolf, it activates him. Yeah, I wanted to make sure I was still drawing, so if I played into the Forge, I would have blocked a draw, which keeps the Darkhawk bigger. It means I'm not getting towards this Loki. That's what I'm trying to make sure, is that I'm always getting towards this Loki. Alright, so even when I do this, I make sure not to play into Forge, because Snow Guard is going to add 2 cards to my hand. I still want to get that 1 draw, right? Obviously there's a ton of rocks in my deck, but that's beside the point. I do have Werewolf and Collector, both very strong. I have Miles. Even Forge helps out our deck quite a bit. Okay, so now at this point, I know I'm not getting a Loki, so I just want to set up myself to move this Werewolf a bunch and just try and get as many points on the board. Like, I want to beat Darkhawk into Dr. Doom, right? Essentially. Or Eliath. I do value this extra energy here, so I go for the Snow Guard Bear on the Tinkerers, and then I'm putting Werewolf middle. It does mean that Werewolf can't end up left. Just a risk I'm taking. I can give up that worst case or put something else there to get enough power. Perhaps a Chavez, right? I can go Murray Hill Chavez here. Okay, looking back, I misplayed here. I should have played the Miles first for the buff on the Collector. Yeah, so here I'm trying to figure out if Chavez left beats Dr. Doom, and the answer I came up was no. And now I'm trying to figure out if I can beat Dr. Doom, like with Travis Maryhill on the right here, and the answer was yes. Obviously they do have Eliath, which could get me. But I couldn't beat both, so I just decided to beat the Dr. Doom. And that's what they did, and I beat it by 1 exactly. I'm noticing another misplay here. Thankfully I didn't notice this during the game, but there was no reason that I should have played Chavez there. I should have played Chavez middle, right? It's the same power as Werewolf, and then I would have +2 on the right. Small misplay. Okay, so now we're going to the last game. pretty much the entire setup has gone to this. Right, one game to decide it all. Of course, it's Vesuvius, not like Weird Retreat anyways. Yeah, same thing, always putting Collector into the lane with small stuff. Try and keep it in the safe lane as well. Obviously, Quantum's a little bit disappointing. We'd love to have a Collector there. No Loki is a little bit scary, but they can't really play into Machine World. They actually go for an early Darkhawk here, which is super nice. I don't think they've seen my Shang-Chi, so it's possible they didn't think I had one, but this Shang-Chi ends up getting me a ton of value here because they also end up going to Rockslide Korg. And what looks like a sure win on Quantum Realm turns into a ball of fire. And now turn 5, I do have this Loki. I have potential to draw with Nico as well, but not really any need to, since we killed their Darkhawk, and I can't draw and then Loki, right? Obviously, I don't want to kill my Loki either. Nothing in my deck is really worth getting on the last turn, so decide to just go for fairly small Loki. I believe just Maria Hill Loki. I'm deciding what I can afford to give my opponent here, right? Giving them a Loki on the last turn is probably fine. That's my determination. But yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what's the best way to balance this werewolf. And I decide I don't want to fill up left here. Instead, I just want to put Maria Hill right, so I have bigger stuff to put on the so here I'm trying to set up Miss Marvel again. I want to be able to fight for left, so I don't want to put Maria Hill on the Quinjet lane because that will interfere with Miss Marvel. And obviously, I want to Loki after the Maria Hill, so I do lose one Werewolf proc for the ability to Miss Marvel, which ends up paying off because I do hit the Miss Marvel. And they give me their Fantastic, which is awesome. And 2 on reveals, which I can use to move Werewolf if I need to. And yeah, so now here I'm just trying to figure out, can I beat Dr. Doom and Alioth? I think they're gonna do one or the other or both, right? And so Miss Marvel, Fantastic mid, beats Dr. Doom always, and then moving the Werewolf with Black Widow and Rockslide beats Alioth mid, right? And obviously it also beats the side lane Alioth's, since then my Miss Marvel and Fantastic would be alive. Okay, so I'm spacing out the Black Widow on the Rockslide. Black Widow gets the buff, and it also doesn't stop my Marvel from triggering. So yeah, at this point, I think there's no way that I can lose. Since we have all the bases covered, like that was honestly like an insane hit. Like other than maybe hitting Alioth or Doom, that was probably among the best cards I could have hit. Like 2 on reveals and then the Miss Marvel. I guess Absman copying Loki would have been nice too. That's one thing I noticed with the Absman is that Loki can often take much better advantage of it than than the Sabu Absorbing Man player, by like copying better effects basically. Yeah, I do sacrifice the Marvel on the left here, but I think that's honestly worth it considering the Werewolf, right? Putting the Werewolf there is more important, more power. I end up getting a full casserole here, which is completely awesome. Really tough matchup. They played it pretty well, honestly. Their Shadow Kings are very good. Yeah, but we end up clutching it up because I don't get too hung up on the many mistakes I did, as I talked about. I kept making mistakes, but I tried to let it go after each game. and now I'm reflecting on it. Alright, let's skip ahead. Here I ended up taking a break since that was a long game. I went to the restroom, etc. We're into TVA game. TVA games, kind of hit or miss with Loki. Quinjet Maria is kind of nice because I could play a good 2-drop off of the Maria for 1. Obviously, don't want to snap this, not knowing their deck, right? Unfortunately, I get another Falcon, which is like not what I want because I don't want to pick up cards here. I just want to add cards to the board. I do get Collector, which is pretty neat. I'm not sure if I made the right play here, putting Collector mid. I actually think I should have put Collector in Throne Room since it gets very big, but I think I just got absorbed into playing in their armor lane. They played Nightcrawler Jeff Armor, so I'm trying to figure out what deck they are. Honestly, I don't know at this point. I was actually very confused. I was thinking maybe the Silk move deck with armor. But yeah, the Nightcrawler confused me a lot. Although it has, what I realized after, because I did stream after this, is that Nightcrawler is super common in the ongoing list. Like the ongoing Miss Marvel list. Yeah, so you see here, I decide not to Snowguard Hawk, saying that they're going to move something from the right, and then if they play there, they can't play something bigger than 4. Unfortunately, they play a Warpath, which is 5, and so they win the Throne Room, and then they win the tiebreaker by 2 points. And I regret not hawking, but it's only for 2 cubes. I think I was favored, but I should have likely played the Collector in the Throne Room, knowing it was a TVA game and that I had Falcon in hand. But live and learn. But yeah, so now since I saw the Warpath, I know they're an ongoing deck. I'm thinking on some kind of ongoing Destroyer pool 2 deck, but honestly it could be a few different things. It could be a lockdown, right, thing. Put out the copy. Copying double Werewolf is sometimes bait, but you'll hear people say that it's always bait, but honestly there is situation for it, like depending on, honestly it's generally if your hand is bad, but as long as you make sure, like, you don't have to fill the full location, right, to make it worthwhile. If you fill 3 spots and the 3rd card, right, is an on reveal, the first Werewolf you play will get moved there and the second one will stay. So do keep track of which Werewolf is your first if you ever copy. We get Goblined here, so I'm thinking it's like Galactus. But it could just be the ongoing Destroyer list, right? Since Destroyer doesn't destroy the goblins, yada yada yada. Okay, so what you'll see here is that the first Werewolf play will move mid, and then both of them will move into Monster Metropolis. So I'm just thinking about that. If it's worth it, like what is my last couple turns gonna look like? What my hand looks like, right? I'm planning on Lokiing most likely next turn, but even if I draw a Collector. Ideally I'd draw a Falcon, but don't know, right? You don't know what you're gonna get. I do get Falcon here, which is super nice, and now I'm just trying to count how many stuff gets picked up in what order, and if it's worth it. I think I just determined that it's not worth it, but I do decide to Ravona because I do want to keep 1 Werewolf in Monster Metropolis, because otherwise they can prof there, and honestly that's kind of what I'm expecting with this snap, is a professor. I really want to split these up. I get to see that they have Chavez, which is a nice find. They prof and they don't win there, and they can't win with Miss Marvel or anything. And now I'm just seeing if I Chavez mid. It goes to 15, and now I'm just thinking about, okay, if they move Jeff into Monster Metropolis and to Miss Marvel, it'd go to 9, 14, so it's still win. If they play Destroyer, is there a way I could win, right? Because I'm going to 15 middle, so if they did Destroyer, I would win the tiebreakers, right? Or I would win actually right and left. I guess I just go for the Chavez mid, they go for Orca, and I win mid and right. I didn't snap this because if I did, I thought they would leave since I was ahead. One thing you notice here is that I played their Chavez just so that they wouldn't know that I have one. Really small like optimization, but you should generally do that if you can, like if you ever have a choice. This way it doesn't get added to their deck tracker. It just makes them think a bit longer, whether they're doing deck tracker or keeping track by hand, right? I got Collector Werewolf start, which is really nice. Honestly, Dr. Doom is kind of nice too, assuming that I can avoid this professor. And yeah, now we're just waiting. This opponent's been playing pretty slowly. But our turns are not that complicated here. I'm just waiting for good Nico. And trying to set up this werewolf. Goblin is annoying for sure. Something I was thinking about, but didn't have a way to play around it. Here I get the Nico draw spell. Really, really nice. I can bounce the wolf around, bounce the collector. I can get 3 draws towards the Loki, which almost guarantees it. Like, Loki would have to be literally the bottom card of my deck, and if it was, I'd mean I would get a Falcon, which is perfectly fine. They play an Atuma, which I can Shang-Chi, but also they'll have priority for a Professor, so they could just Professor on top of it. So I'm just assuming, right? It's a Atuma Professor deck. Like they're gonna Professor this Atuma. So I want to set myself up so I can be this Orca. Play Snowguard mid and then Loki left. If they Professor X mid, the werewolf will just jump to the Loki, and I should be ahead right on every lane. Which means I can't get Eliath. At this point, I'm still not sure if they have Eliath or not. A lot of these lists do run Eliath. But I can see they have Destroyer instead, which now I just have to beat 15 on Sewer System or 16 on Starlight Citadel. So I'm just doing the math of that. You'll notice I move this around a lot. Yeah, and then I find the play here, put 22 on Sewer System, and then 19 on Starlight Citadel, and I can't lose to any cards that I know of. They go for Orca. take 4 here, which is huge. Okay, into these style of lockdown decks, Lokis are very good. You just have to make sure you can beat Allied a lot of the time. I think they leave here. Yeah, they leave after this game. Or rage quit. Alright. Now we are going into, is this the final game? Yes, it is the final game, so choosing my avatar. Alright, now we go into the final game. Obviously, always the most stressful one, putting on a new avatar, and we're trying to win. They play Nico, which could mean that they're Loki, could mean that they're Bounce, both very scary decks. That was my initial thought. Yep, Loki Mirror. Immediately into Loki Mirror. Probably the most common matchup you'll see in Infinity 5. I think I saw it quite a few times actually. This is very interesting. You'll notice I peek up for this one a little bit more because it is a more interesting matchup, and it's a matchup I played a lot. And honestly, I think I have a good handle for it. They have Double Collector here, obviously extremely spooky. It is a Mindscape game, so I decided just to Loki early and just try and empty my hand here and give them nothing. That being said, if they do buff these collectors enough, I won't be able to compete regardless. But yeah, I get to see they have Rogue here, they have a Loki. I'm not going to snap because I am very afraid of this my opponent having a Loki. They have like a pretty full hand here, I believe, going into this turn. So I didn't want to snap it. I will say, like, Loki mirrors are one of the hardest mirrors for me to snap in because of the fact that there's just so much variation in what they can do, right? Yeah. Remember, Rogue won't trigger Werewolf, similar to Mystique. Because it becomes an ongoing effect. It has to end, right? That's that effect. Yeah, here they go Snowguard, and they don't go Loki, they go Snowguard Coulson. So I believe we are completely fine here. That being said, I do kind of get trash from them. And if I move as Werewolf, I lose the left. So I do believe I spent some time here trying to figure out how to win. But they saved me some effort, and they retreat for 1, which is awesome. Yeah, so the big thing to realize here is I just have to beat Chavez. So if I just play 3 power mid, I win the game. Right, I gave him an empty hand. Right, so, and that was pretty much solely an adaptation from seeing Mindscape turn 1. Was I want to empty my hand, give them nothing, then I win. So stuff like that. Another optimization I didn't mention earlier, if you're playing out multiple ones, you want to play Quinjet last, because if your hand gets full, like let's say you get Triskelion and stuff, you can set yourself up where you only pull these, right? Falcon will pull in order, so you want to pull not Quinjet, right? So always play your Quinjet after if you're playing multiple stuff in the same turn. Yeah, watching your hand size is very important. Obviously here setting up some werewolf jumping. Right, so here I would add, go up to 5, and then I'd Falcon in 3, so I would miss a draw. This way I believe I also miss a draw because I'd go up to 5 and then 7 with Snowguard. I believe I should have played Kitty here. I could have avoided this. I did dodge a rogue though. That's awesome. And then now I get Quintet Loki. My werewolf's been buffed, their werewolf's been doing nothing. So if I get the right hand here, I can win. Assuming that they also don't have Loki as well. Yeah, anytime you're in a position of Quintet Loki and the mirror, you are very, very happy. Here I get a reasonable hand. And I already know they don't have Loki because they're playing a bunch of cards and they can't do that if they had Loki. Yeah, getting their Travis is awesome because I get the doubled Quintet, so it's cheap. And I get another Werewolf, honestly, is completely fine, even if I bounce it only once. It's just a 5 power thing. They retreat. Don't retreat now, chat, especially in the mirror. Why am I saying chat? You're not, sorry, streaming habits. Don't retreat now in the mirror. I could have got garbage, and it's possible that I would have retreated, so always hit retreat later, especially in Infinity 5 of Conquest. I'm surprised that needs to be said. No worries, it's a little bit annoying, but it does mean my Quintet's safe from their rogue, which is always nice. Pretty much the only thing their rogue can hit in this matchup outside of armor, which I'm not ever playing really. Doesn't really save me. Talent's a little bit annoying. I could have thought about hawking it since I did have Loki. Since I do have Loki. But I ended up just valuing this werewolf more since we were both missing a collector. Obviously they have collector now, which is a little bit unfortunate. But didn't really want to dig down that rabbit hole just yet. It does flip Asgard, which is huge. I can move this werewolf with the bear and also play collector and make my hand a lot larger. Right after Talon, your hand gets pretty small. So if I can win this, I'm in a good spot. Obviously, vice versa, if I lost it, I'd be in a pretty bad spot. Being said, I do believe I missed the Loki here. Oh no, I do hit the Loki. But yeah, I am very limited on space. To where I just decide to just straight up Loki so that I can be flexible with where I put this werewolf. Right, instead of Murray Hill Loki. Which would be +1 on the collector. Yeah, I value just having the option to move this werewolf back. They go for like all the bouncing, which is good for them. And now another important thing to know, if it's a nowhere or Cosmo, you can move the werewolf into a nowhere zone. So do keep that in mind. So here I'm just trying to figure out what's the best way I can get werewolf in really big middle while also buffing my collector. So I do this a few iterations. I do believe the best way to do this is to get the Falcon to pick up Snowguard and Agent 13. Oh, okay, but I guess I decide not to for some reason. I decided to fight for middle here since I was fairly confident that they wouldn't fight for middle. That being said, it does mean Asgard I could get hit. Oh yeah, Shang-Chi. That's why I didn't Falcon. Yeah, I'm playing around Shang-Chi here. Because I do run that in my deck. Alright, see, I don't only make mistakes when I'm reviewing the VOD. I actually did play that correctly, because if I played the Falcon, I would have gone up to 10, and then I would have been Shang-Chi'd. So if I played the Falcon outside of the nowhere. So I get a couple of cubes there, and now I have a slight edge. Honestly, anytime you're in a mirror and a slight edge, anytime you're in a mirror with a slight edge, you really gotta take advantage of it, because they can really flop both ways. I literally just had to come back yesterday on stream, down like 9-1 in the Loki mirror, because because I think I played very well in a lot of close matches, but also I just had a series of just like drawing the nuts, and they didn't draw it. Yeah, here we had Hub and Lehigh, which unfortunately denied me a couple of draws. That being said, I do have a fairly good hand for buffing Werewolf. Thing is, anytime I play a card that adds cards to my hand, I also need to play one that doesn't, which Bear cannot do, because we can't Lehigh and Hub. So I decided to just play Captain America instead, because I do want to get this draw towards the potential Loki. Just setting that up, trying to put as many points in the vault as possible. But yeah, I did miss Loki here, which is super unfortunate. Now I'm just trying to buff up werewolves. Maybe I can just win with stats, right? They snap me here, and yeah, I decide to retreat because they have Collector and Werewolf. It's very likely that they have a Loki coming up if they're snapping here. So no reason to throw away my lead, but I feel like I'm in a comfortable position. You'll have to excuse my yawn. Also, it was a free retreat since it was round 4, so now we're going to high stakes. Get the card draw right off the start. I believe I snapped this actually, because I have the card draw, I have Collector. Pretty much all I can ask for, right? The best I can ask for. Right, like I'm pushing the stakes here, which is something important in a mirror that you need to do, where I'm saying that I have Collector Werewolf, Nico draws me cards. That's gonna be a better hand than what they have. Right. I decided to go Mirror Heal just so I can get the maximum draws towards Loki. Right, if I played Snow Guard, I would have blocked my top deck, which made me sad. That being said, my top deck gets stolen by Hell's Kitchen. But let's just pretend Agent 13 was on the top of the deck anyways. Yeah, so I don't have to look. You have a 50% chance to get next turn. If I whiff, I still get Shang-Chi. And I do have a bunch of other stuff, right? I have the Silk is honestly pretty nice. I have Falcon to potentially buff this Collector. They do have Loki. I do believe it's only for like 4 or 5 cards. So I do miss my own Loki, which sucks. That being said, I do have this Shang, and then I get to put something in Danger Room. Put a big Werewolf in Danger Room. Still feel like I'm in an okay spot, right? Like, this is pretty much the next best thing to having Loki. Right, since I have priority, they can't armor the monster. And then Agent 13 just makes this crazy pull for me as well, because they actually high roll here a lot and they get another Collector. But Devil Dino is absolutely insane. Cool. Where like I get to play Dino and Silk here, or Dino and like Bear or Hawk. I do believe I just go for armor here since they did steal my decks, right? So I have Shang-Chi in my deck, so yeah, I just go for armor on the monster, and then Devil Dino on Hell's Kitchen. Dino is 13, which puts me to 20. Werewolf gets to stay mid. If they do play mid, they have to run the odds of stuff dying. So I just say that this is enough, right? Like, they've played Collector, Agent, and Maria. We're all from my Loki. We're from their Loki, but they're my cards. So I only have like 1 or 2 more of my cards. And yeah, so I get this armor off, I get this Dino off. They use the Loki Shang, right? I believe that Mantis is from Agent 13. And now I'm basically just waiting to see if they have another Loki. If they don't, they have Falcon instead. And we close it out. Very, very good win. So yeah, this was, I think, like avatar number 6 or 7. I hope you enjoyed this little conversation that we had. Feel free to drop any questions in the comments in this video or any video you're curious about my thought process. Definitely like and subscribe if you made it all the way to the end. And I will catch you all in the next one. Next season with the same VOD review. Hopefully with the next best deck that's not Loki. But yeah, peace.